What is up, guys? This is Tcg Sam here, and in today's video I'm coming at you guys with the top 5 secret budget tech cards that I feel like could make a huge impact in this format and any future format, to be honest. But before we begin, I just want to ask you guys to please remember, if you haven't already, leave a like, comment, subscribe, because it really helps keep me motivated to keep posting more videos like this. And also, I've also noticed that a very small percentage of my viewers actually subscribe, so if you do like these videos, then please let me know by subscribing, leaving a like, leaving a comment, sharing with your friends. I would really appreciate that. But without any further ado, let's just hop straight in. So the very first card I'm going to reveal is going to be No Material. So, in my opinion, No Material is one of those hand traps that has the potential to completely end someone's turn, as opposed to something like an Ash or a Bell that may only just trade 1 for 1. So the types of hand traps that can completely end a turn are the types that are really my favorite. So cards like Lancia, D-Shifter, and No Material. So for those of you who don't know what No Material does, I'm going to put it on the screen. No Material is super good against those combo decks that like to link summon a lot. And what I mean by that is, as soon as they summon a link monster to their action monster zone, then you No Material that link monster, and they pretty much can't link summon for the rest of the turn unless they find a way to somehow like get rid of that monster on the board by banishing it or something. That's like the only way I can think of that they can get rid of it, because they can't tribute, they can't fusion, they can't synchro Xyz or link it off. It's pretty insane, to be honest. There are a few downsides to this card, however, though. You have to have no cards, and it's just really restrictive in that scenario, because it's only good going second pretty much. But for the impact that it brings, I feel like it definitely has the potential to become meta relevant one day when link climbing becomes more relevant again. For now, the only deck it can really hit, in my opinion, is probably going to be Dragon Link when they go into Striker Dragon. They have to hard draw a card like World Legacy Guard Dragon to move it, or they have to hard draw a card like Red MD to get rid of it. So in my opinion, I feel like No Material is still pretty decent against that matchup. But in the future, definitely look out for this. And the next card I'm going to reveal is going to be Performapal Popper Up. So Popper Up is a very interesting draw spell that kind of flew under the radar until it was used by Spirals a few formats ago. However, I believe it has prevalence in this format once again. And the reason is, it acts as in a way a very washed, graceful charity, if that makes sense. So pretty much you're sending cards you want from your hand to the graveyard, so stuff that have effects in the graveyard. So I feel like this is probably really good for like Virtual World and Drytron potentially, because all their stuff has effects in the graveyard, and they can unbrick you by drawing into your other cards while still getting pluses off the cards you sent to the graveyard. Of course, the life point thing doesn't really matter, in my opinion, unless you're specifically going to time. But otherwise, I feel like the life points, giving up life points for more consistency is definitely worth it, because if you think about it, against a combo deck, it doesn't really matter how many life points you have. If they set up a board you can't break, you're just gonna lose anyways. So like, giving up some life points shouldn't come up. Like, it can only really be relevant against Dragoon, but if it helps you build a board, your opponent's probably not getting out Dragoon in the first place. So for that reason, I think Popper Up's a very nice consistency card. It's also important to note, you can also send other copies of itself if you draw multiples, so it's difficult to brick on something. The unfortunate thing about this card is, aside from the life point cost, it is a cost to discard, so you don't get effects like Shadal's, and you lose harder to negations. So that is something to remember with this. But definitely do not underestimate this card. It's a very budget consistency card that you can play on top of something like Desires if you don't have money for Prosperity or something in your Virtual World deck, which I don't, so I'm going to be trying this out. But I think this is a really nice card that you guys should definitely not sleep on. And the next card I'm going to be talking about is Hey Trunade. So Hey Trunade is a really simple card that just returns all set spells and traps on the field to the hand. That's all it does. It's not even once per turn, so funnily enough. So if you have multiples and your opponent negates the first one, you can use it again. So this is in theory good against all the back row decks that are at the top of the meta. So what I mean by that is decks like Eldritch, which is really the only back row deck I can really think of off the top of my head, because they're playing cards like Torrential, Dinomiscus, Strike, and then all their elixirs. Sure, they can chain their Sanguine, they can chain their Huaquero and Conquistador, but like, what's that gonna do if you're playing this as your very first card. Like, you have 5 other cards to just combo and break through 3 monsters on the board at that point. It turns off your opponent's heavy impact traps like Torrential and Strike, because they can't chain it to that. It forces them to draw Judgment, and as far as I know, most of them aren't playing Judgment at this point. So that's really, really good. The unfortunate thing about this card is that against decks that play a lot of Floodgates, so as far as I know, something like Subterrors would play a lot of Floodgates they could just chain to this. It's just really not that great against those types of decks. But it also has applications against a deck like Sky Strikers, if you still run around, because they're still running around, to be honest. This has applications against Strikers. It can be pretty decent. And just against like other back row decks that don't play a lot of continuous traps. A lot of the best traps in the format right now are normal traps that can be searched off a trap trick. So something like Dogmatica Punishment, if your opponent's playing a Dogmatica engine, like, you can return the Punishment to hand, because we all know how high impact Punishment can be. So hey Trunade, definitely do not sleep on this card either. It's mainly more for combo decks, I'm going to be honest, but I feel like hey Trunade definitely has more potential in the future, as long as Floodgates aren't like at the forefront of the meta in terms of trap decks. Moving on to the next card, we have Different Dimension Ground. It also has a very simple effect, where it just states, this turn, any monster sent to the graveyard is banished instead. So this card is potentially devastating against the top tier decks in Virtual World and Drytron especially, because Drytron can't really do anything under DDG. A Virtual World can do something, but like, they're probably not going to want to get rid of their resources, so many resources, to put up a big board in that case. They might just end on a Shenzhen or something, which should be easy enough to break. But the other great thing about DDG is it's a normal trap card that is not once returned, so if it gets negated, you can use another one. And you can search it off a card like Trap Trick, which is really important. It gives you potentially 6 copies of this card when you side it in, which can just be a complete... You can completely end... I will say, it will completely end Drytron's turn if you draw this card. It's actually insane. Against other meta decks I may not be remembering at the moment, like off the top of my head, I can't even remember what else is in the meta other than like Eldritch and the 2 decks I mentioned. But against any deck that needs monsters in the graveyard, this is just gonna be such a huge lot against them. Even going second, if your opponent needs to Link Climb or something to kill you, and their monsters get effects in the graveyard, this can still be pretty decent against them. So keep that in mind. I'm not sure how expensive this is, but it probably isn't too pricey. But it's definitely not a card you guys should forget exists, because especially even just against siding it against Drytron should be enough reason to play it, because it just completely ends their turn, pretty much. It's a little better than D-Shifter in my opinion, because D-Shifter requires you have no cards in your graveyard, so you pretty much have to be going second. And D-Shifter also banishes your cards during your turn, so it prevents you from comboing if you're playing that type of deck. But even if you're playing a combo deck, you can side this in going first, and it's just an extra layer of security against the Drytron deck, because you can just completely end their turn. And the final card I'm going to be talking about is Paleozoic Dinomiscus. So this one's the most well-known out of these 5, but for good reason. Paleozoic Dinomiscus, if you guys haven't been living on the rock, Dinomiscus, I'm going to put it up on the screen. Its effect is a little long, but pretty much the gist of it is you discard a card and banish a face-up card on the field, and if a trap card's activated, you get to summon it back as a level 2 Aqua monster. So the important part about Dinomiscus is it's not a cost, so that's important for a number of reasons. It prevents you from losing too much if your opponent negates it. It allows you to trigger effects like Shaddoll monsters, so those two are pretty huge. And the other thing is it's not even once per turn, so yeah, that's pretty nice. And initially it may not seem that great because it is inherently a -1, because you're discarding a card and using the Dinomiscus to get rid of 1 card. But just banishing cards is so powerful because it prevents them from ever hitting the graveyard and getting their graveyard effects. So Dinomiscus is just super nice, and in the future it will replace itself because it brings itself back as a normal monster that is unaffected by monster effects, which I don't know if that's important, but the fact of the matter is it's a monster that you get to summon back, allowing you to go into more link plays. So you can make cards like the Nightmares with this, which is just really nice, and it even triggers off of your opponent's trap cards. It can act as a chump blocker too. So eventually you will just get your resources back, but just remember, banishing an opponent's card is just potentially huge, and You can set them back so far, especially if it's a graveyard reliant deck like Eldritch. If you banish Golden Lord, that's huge. If you banish Eldland, that's huge. Like, it can also stop one of their continuous traps from triggering. So when they summon their Golden Lord out, activate their trap, you just chain on their continuous trap, banish it. So they don't get the resource engrave and they don't get the summon to attempt to interrupt you. So Dinomiscus is a very, very good card. It's probably the most generic out of all of these that you can play in pretty much any deck. Control or combo. In a combo deck, this acts as an Alchemistic Mine. In control decks, it acts as just a good way to stop important bodies from hitting the graveyard, and important spells or traps from hitting the graveyard in the Eldritch matchup. And of course, you're playing Paleo, it's very, very good, obviously. But that's gonna do it for me, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, leave a like, comment, subscribe, because it really helps keep me motivated to keep posting more videos like this. I hope this was helpful to you guys. Hopefully you guys learned something new, learned about some new cards that people might have just been sleeping on. And in my opinion, these 5 cards definitely should not be forgotten, and are all very budget friendly, so that's perfect for anyone to just pick up. So do keep that in mind and be on the lookout for these. But with that being said, I just want to thank you guys so much for watching once again, and I will see you guys soon.